The weight of dreams on a commander. The moment meaning replaced survival. Everyone thinks Erwin Smith was fearless, but the truth is, he was terrified of living without answers. By the end of this video, you'll understand why Erwin didn't choose death to escape pain, but to give his suffering meaning. From the moment Erwin was a child, he wanted one thing more than safety. He wanted truth, not comfort, not peace, truth. He grew up in a world that punished curiosity. Questions were dangerous. Thinking too deeply could get you killed. And when his father died for asking the wrong question, Erwin learned a lesson that never left him. The world kills those who seek truth. But instead of stopping, Erwin internalized that danger. He carried it like a quiet debt. If his father died for truth, then truth had to be worth dying for. Otherwise, that death meant nothing. As Erwin rose through the ranks, people saw a leader, a strategist, a commander willing to sacrifice soldiers for victory. What they didn't see was the boy still chasing an answer in the dark. Erwin didn't dream of glory. He dreamed of proof. Proof that his father wasn't wrong. Proof that the world beyond the walls existed. Proof that his pain had a purpose. Every smile he wore was borrowed. Every speech was rehearsed. Because behind the confidence lived a man afraid of reaching the truth and finding nothing there. He led soldiers into hell knowing many would never return, and each death followed him, not as guilt alone, but as pressure. Pressure to make those deaths mean something. The more lives he spent, the heavier the answer had to be. Because if the truth was small, then the sacrifice was unforgivable. This is where Erwin's real conflict lived, not between life and death, but between hope and responsibility. He wanted to see the basement. He wanted confirmation, but he also knew that reaching it meant stepping over the bodies of people who trusted him. Every charge he ordered tightened the trap. Every fallen soldier pushed him closer to a line he couldn't uncross. If he turned back, all of it would collapse into meaningless loss. So Erwin kept moving forward, not because he was brave, but because stopping would force him to face the possibility that his dream was selfish. And then came the moment that stripped everything away. A choice with no strategy, no clever plan, only truth. In that moment, Erwin saw himself clearly, not as a hero, not as a savior, but as a man who had used others to chase a childhood question. This is the part people misunderstand. Erwin didn't smile because he wanted to die. He smiled because he finally understood himself. If he lived, he would reach the truth. And then what? He would have to live with the weight of every life lost in his name, with no enemy left to blame. If he died, his dream would survive without him. The truth would still be reached, and his soldiers' deaths would serve something greater than one man's curiosity. So Erwin made the only choice that let him breathe. He chose to become a symbol instead of a survivor. By riding toward death, he freed himself from the answer. He let the next generation carry the truth forward, unburdened by his personal guilt. This wasn't courage in the traditional sense. It was surrender. Surrender to the idea that meaning matters more than fulfillment. Erwin understood something terrifying. Sometimes achieving your dream destroys you. Sometimes letting it go is the only way to protect what it stands for. As the charge began, Erwin wasn't thinking about victory. He was thinking about release, about finally paying the debt he'd carried since childhood. And as he rode forward, he wasn't running from death. He was running toward meaning. Because for Erwin Smith, living without purpose was the real defeat. That choice reveals the psychology beneath the legend. Erwin was driven by a quiet fracture, a split between who he was and why he led. When trauma forms early, it shapes direction. Erwin learned that questions cost lives, so he wrapped curiosity in duty. He turned desire into command. This is a common survival pattern. When pain feels meaningless, the mind builds a mission. If everything hurts for a reason, it hurts less. Erwin's authority gave him control. Control over chaos. Control over fear. But control is not peace. It only delays the reckoning. Every victory strengthened the mask. The commander who never hesitated. Yet inside, the doubt grew louder. Was he saving humanity or feeding a private obsession? This is what an identity crisis looks like. Not confusion, but certainty built on fragile ground. He could not separate the dream from the deaths. Attachment played its role too. Erwin attached his self-worth to outcomes. If progress continued, He deserved to exist. If it stopped, he didn't. So when the final decision arrived, fear changed shape. Fear of dying faded. Fear of living remained. Living meant answers. Answers meant responsibility. Responsibility meant facing himself. Dying meant clarity. A clean ending. A story others could believe in. Here is the painful truth. Erwin wasn't chasing freedom. He was running from helplessness. As a child, he was powerless. As a commander, he refused to be again. Death was the only thing he could choose without compromise. In choosing it, he reclaimed agency, not over the world, but over his narrative. This is why his death feels heavy, because it mirrors something human. The moment you stop asking what you want and start asking what your suffering can justify, you may recognize this feeling. Staying in a role because leaving would waste years, chasing a goal because quitting would erase sacrifices, calling it purpose when it is really fear. Sometimes meaning becomes a cage, built from expectations, reinforced by praise, locked by guilt. Erwin shows us the cost. When meaning replaces living, death can look honest. His story doesn't ask you to admire him. It asks you to reflect on the dreams you protect at all costs and the parts of yourself they silence. Because not every sacrifice is noble, and not every ending is victory. Erwin Smith found peace, not by learning the truth, but by letting it outlive him. And maybe that's why his story lingers, because in the end, he was just human. Meaning feels safer than uncertainty. Certainty feels safer than doubt. That is why people cling to roles that hurt them. Erwin's charge exposes a mirror. When the future is unbearable, people romanticize sacrifice. They call it honor. They call it destiny. But underneath, it is relief. Relief from deciding tomorrow. Relief from facing emptiness after success. Relief from asking who you are without the struggle. This doesn't make Erwin weak. It makes him honest. He chose the ending he could live with, even if it meant not living at all. And that honesty unsettles us, because it asks a dangerous question. If your dream disappeared tonight, who would you be in the morning? That silence can be terrifying, but it can also be freeing, because you are more than a mission, more than a wound, more than the story you tell to survive. Without it, you might finally hear yourself. In that quiet, something real can begin, or end. Honestly, for the first time, ever again. If stories like this stay with you, Anime Whispers will be waiting. There are many quiet tragedies left to tell,